Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Allie.
And for our literacy lesson plan, we did a lesson designed for fourth grade titled Identifying Themes in Poetry.
The central focus of our lesson is the comprehension of poetry. And this lesson will focus on the essential literacy strategy of identifying the theme of a text, specifically within a poem, and related skills, including drawing details from the text, summarizing main ideas, and understanding the structural elements of a poem. This learning segment will be following a previous lesson on the different elements of poetry, where the students will learn about rhythm, meter, and verse.
The standard that we use for our learning segment is determine a theme of a story, drama, or poem from details in the text, summarize the text. And the standard is for reading literature at the fourth grade level.
The prior knowledge that the students need to know is how to identify details in a text and write simple sentences. The students must be able to organize information in a chart and read a text at the appropriate grade level, fourth grade typically. They must also be able to follow along with the text when someone else is reading and work with peers in small groups. The students will have knowledge of the structural elements of a poem from the day prior in which the lesson was taught about all of the elements.
We have two learning objectives for this lesson. The first is students will be able to identify the theme, or at least one if multiple themes are portrayed, of a given text by using details from the text to support their idea by completing an exit ticket after the learning segment is complete. The second objective is students will be able to differentiate using at least one example in each category between plot and theme by using a provided chart to organize their information and ideas.
The strategy that we've chose to work with is the difference between plot and theme, which is featured in the Saravallo Reading Strategies textbook on page 195. This reading strategy helps students identify themes in a story by jotting down notes about what is happening in the story's plot and then asking themselves, what is the big idea about what's happening in the story? We chose to use this strategy because we believed it aligned well with the standard for this lesson and will help students identify the difference between a story's plot and a story's theme. Since themes are often not explicitly stated in the text, this strategy will allow students to create a visual of their thoughts using the provided graphic organizer and infer the theme or themes of a story based on the events in the plot. This would be an example of what our T-chart will look like. As you can see, on the left side, we have one section for plot, and then below that we have what happens. And then in the other section, we have theme, and what's under that is big idea about it. This chart was taken specifically from the Saravallo textbook, and we actually use the examples later on. We will explain more about that in a minute.
So in order to activate prior knowledge for this lesson, the teacher is going to begin the learning segment with a review of the elements in a poem, which are rhythm, meter, and verse, and those were taught in the previous lesson. And this is going to be done using individual student whiteboards. So the teacher is going to ask the students what each element is one at a time, and then ask the students to write their response on the board. And the students will hold them up once they have finished, and then the teacher can easily and quickly monitor what the students remember before she begins the learning segment. This is going to allow the students to recall what they already know about poems before they begin to work with the new reading strategy in today's lesson. So our modeling for the lesson, the teacher is going to begin with a read aloud of our poem, Valentine for Earnest Man. The teacher is going to read the poem one stanza at a time, and after each, he or she will pause in order to discuss with the class what's happening in that part of the text. And then following this, the teacher will create a T-chart on the board so that all the students can see it. This will look like the T-chart that Allie showed previously. And the teacher is then going to create or make up her own example of how to model and use the graphic organizer to infer a theme based on the events of a plot. So this is what the teacher's modeling example will look like on the board. She will quickly create the T-chart, having plot on the left and theme on the right, and then the guiding questions under it, what happens, and the big idea about it. So the example will say, the boy moved to a new apartment. He is worried about missing his friends. And then she will describe that the themes she can infer from these events of the plot are, it can be hard to change, and sometimes we worry when we don't need to. And this example was taken also from the Cerebello text.
For the collaborative engagement, we have decided that the class will be split into small groups, and each group will be given a blank T-chart that matches the graph the teacher made on the board in the previous slide. The students will work with their assigned peers to fill in this chart, again, based on the poem they read. They will be able to use their copies of the poem to reread as necessary, and the teacher will walk around the classroom and observe the students as they work. If needed, she can assist groups by reading sentences from the poem and asking, what do you think the big ideas are about this sentence? After each group has completed the chart, the class will come back together as a whole group to discuss what they have done. The teacher will ask the groups to share out one of their plot points and the theme in which they created from those details. As far as the individual application goes, we decided that the students will utilize this strategy and skill whenever reading literature to further their comprehension, especially within poetry, and will apply it directly again in the next planned lesson for the following day, in which the students will compose their own poems, switch with a classmate, and then identify the plot points and themes of each other's writing.
So our assessment for this learning segment is an informal assessment, which is an exit ticket, and this will be used at the end of the lesson to ensure that each individual student is able to identify a theme for the given text. This will ensure that they can identify a theme on their own using the supporting details from the text. The image on the right is what the exit ticket we pass out to the students will look like. The question will be, what was one theme of the poem we read today? Valentine for Earnest Man by Naomi Shihab Nye. And then there will be a box where the student can record their answer. Also, the teacher will use observation throughout the lesson as an assessment, especially during small group work. The teacher will walk around and observe the students as they work with their peers and offer assistance or guidance when it is necessary.
So this lesson fits in as the second day of our 3-day block plan. The first day we will teach the different elements of poetry using multiple different models and examples of different poems. On the second day, we will talk about this lesson that we have just shared with you guys, where we will read the poem Valentine for Earnest Man, and then we will move on to identify the plot and the theme and the differences between the two. And then on the third day, we'll complete this block plan with having the students compose their own poetry, and then switching with their peers and trying to identify the themes and elements within each other's poems. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.